Welcome to Lab 10. This is by far one of my favorite labs just because I love the primates so much. It really helps if you really enjoy learning about primates. If you don't, I'm going to try and break it down as easy as possible. That said, there's a lot of information you guys are going to be getting in this lab. It might feel like information overload, just like it did with the bones, and I apologize in advance, but it really helps if you just look for the similarities that certain species are going to have. And as we break it down, I am going to try and point out those species. When it comes to the quiz, there is going to be a lot of identification kinds of questions where I will give you a scenario and I will give you, like, I live in this area, I eat this kind of food, I live in this kind of social organization, and I'll throw in a characteristic that singles out that specific species, and you will guess it from there, right? And so when if I remember them as I'm recording this lecture, I will try and point them out to you. But I can't guarantee that I will point out every single one. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what even are primates. So primates are an order of mammals that evolved over the last 65 million years. And there are hundreds of known non-human primate species living today, although some are critically endangered. So non-human primates are found in tropical and subtropical areas around the world, whereas humans have a worldwide distribution. As mammals, all primates share mammalian traits, right? So the presence of mammary glands, fur, the development of the fetus in the womb, and giving birth to live young. So the primates also share several anatomical and behavioral traits that then differentiate them from other mammals, right? So we're going to talk about those traits, and then we're going to get into the taxonomy classification, and that is going to be what we talk about for the entire lab. So really quick, this is just an overview of where our primates can be found, right? Our prosimians, our New World monkeys, our Old World monkeys, and our apes. And we're going to get into all of these classifications together. So the first similarities that we're going to talk about are behavioral, and then we'll talk about anatomical. So while a few primates are terrestrial, most primates tend to be arboreal. So those that are terrestrial, we mean that they live on the ground, right? Arboreal means that they spend the majority of their time in trees. So this means, given that most of them are arboreal and if some are terrestrial, it means that many primates really live in these densely forested environments. Primates tend to have generalized diets. They eat a range of foods rather than just eating meats or plants. They have a generalized diet. Because of this, primates have generalized dentition. They have 4 different types of teeth that are each suited to a variety of biting and chewing tasks. Some species focus on particular resources, like our gummivores will focus on the gums and tree saps, frugivores on fruits, folivores on foliage, and then are insectivores on insects. So when we have those situations where they focus on a specific food source, then it is most likely then that they were going to have specialized dental adaptations for those types of foods that they eat. And we'll talk about that in later chapters. So we have terrestrial versus arboreal. Then we have nocturnal versus diurnal, right? Few primates are nocturnal, meaning they're active in the nighttime, and most of them tend to be diurnal, which means that they are mostly active during the daytime. Most primates are relatively social, which means that they spend a lot of their time in groups made up of multiple individuals. Even the primates that don't eat together usually will socialize and sleep together. And then most primates are uniparous, meaning that they give birth to one offspring at a time, and primate offspring tend to take longer than other mammals to reach reproductive age. Because of this, Primates are limited in the number of offspring they can have in a lifetime. And this also means that most primates, especially females, invest a lot of time and energy into caring and raising their offspring. Right? So here in the images, we have a monado. This is a special kind of tarsier. It's one of the smallest primates in the world. And on the right here, we have a lion-tailed macaque of India's Western Ghats. It's one of the primate species that is close to extinction. Right. So in addition to these behavioral similarities, the nocturnal versus diurnal, social, uniparous, terrestrial versus arboreal, right? We have important anatomical similarities. So in their anatomy. So primates, anatomically, usually have relatively opposable thumbs and big toes, right? Opposable means that you can place opposite, the big toes and the thumbs can be placed opposite to the other fingers. So it's why we can take our thumb and our pinky and they can touch the touch pads, the tactile pads. These opposable thumbs gives primates the ability to grasp our objects and the tree branches. Primates also have a sensitive sense of touch, particularly in those tactile pads on the tips of the fingers and toes. Primates' hands and feet also have usually have nails instead of claws, seen in many other mammals. We'll see some that have claws instead of nails, but those are like our lorises and our tarsiers. Right? In addition to an enhanced sense of touch, they usually have an enhanced sense of vision. Right? Primates have forward-facing eyes that provide better depth perception because the fields of vision from each eye will overlap in the center. They have more bone around their eyes than other mammals, and so these traits, the depth perception, the structural eye support, and color vision, all provide primates with a better sense of vision than many other mammals. With these traits, there is a trade-off, though, between the senses, such that primates tend to emphasize seeing and touching over smelling and hearing. Right? So color vision, forward-facing eyes, more bony support around the eyes really makes us focus on vision and then the sensitive tactile pads touch rather than smelling and hearing. While primates have many traits to help improve their sight, they have shorter snouts and are less sensitive to smells than many other mammals. Primates have larger brains relative to their body size than many other mammals. However, not all sections of the primate brain are enlarged, right? So the areas of the brain that are associated with the sense of smell, the olfactory bulbs, they're much smaller in primates than in many other mammals, which correlates then to the primate's reduced sense of smell, right? So those are behavioral and anatomical similarities. Right, so let's get into the taxonomy, right? That's going to be the majority of what this lab consists of, is the taxonomy. So the primate order is divided into the suborders Strepsirrhini and Haplorhini, or the Strepsirrhines and the Haplorhines. The Strepsirrhine group includes our Lemurs and Lorises, and the Haplorhine group includes our Tarsiers and our Anthropoids. Right? There has been some debate about whether the tarsiers should be included with the lemurs and the lorises, and current research suggests that tarsiers are more closely related to anthropoids than to lemurs or lorises. This taxonomy, though, will reflect that relationship. So the Anthropoidea infraorder includes all of the monkeys and apes. So this is our Platyrrhini and Catarrhini, or our New World and our Old World monkeys. The New World monkeys are then further broken down into the Seboidea superfamily, and the Seboidea superfamily includes Cebidae and Attalidae. The Old World monkeys and the apes are placed into the Catarrhini parvorder. This further then differentiates into the superfamilies Cercopithecodea, which is our Old World monkeys, and Hominoidea, which is our apes. The Old World monkeys are then classified into two subfamilies, Colobinae and Cercopithecinae, right? The Colobines and the Cercopithecines. And then the apes are classified into two families, Hylobatidae and Hominidae, the lesser apes and the great apes. And the great apes are then further differentiated into three subfamilies, Ponginae, Gorillinae, and Hominidae, right? So, saying all that, I can almost guarantee that you understood maybe 10% of that. Right? So there is a very, very handy map here, or chart, flow chart, to help us put that all in perspective, right? Our primates divided into Strepsirini, Haplorini. Strepsirini is then divided into Lorisoidea and our Lemuroidea, our Lorises and Galligos, and then our Lemurs, right? Lorises and Lemurs. Haplorini is divided into Tarsiforms or Tarsiers or Anthropoidea, right? So Tarsiers are by themselves. Anthropoidea is divided into Platyrrhini, Catarrhini. Platyrrhini divided into Cebidae and Adelaidae. Catarrhini into Cercopithecoidea and Hominoidea. Cercopithecoidea is divided then into Colobinae and Cercopithecinae. Hominoidea into Hylobatidae and Hominidae. Hominidae then is divided into Ponginae, and then, which is our orangutans, and then we have Gorillinae and Homininae, and then our Homininae into Panini and Hominini, and then we have everything that we have divided. We're going to go through each one of these, and we're going to make sure that we talk about the similarities and the differences so that we can really understand how they're all related to each other. Okay, so we start off first with the least closely related to humans, which is our Lorisoidea, our Lorises. So the Lorises include the Lorises, Podos, and Galligos, or also known as our bush babies. These are small primates. They're found in Africa and Southeast Asia. And unlike most primates, Lorises are nocturnal. Because they are nocturnal, they tend to have relatively large eyes, and they take in, those large eyes are there to take in as much ambient light as possible in their dark environments. They also have more rods, which are the photoreceptors in the retina, in their eyes that help them improve their vision in low light environments. So in our eyes, we have receptors called rods and cones. Rods deal with light, and then the cones deal with color vision. So Lorises have more rods in their retina to help with the low light environments. Lorises also have what we call a post-orbital bar, right? We do not have that. Post-orbital bars provide more structural support than is found in most mammals, but it is less supportive than the full enclosure seen in many of our other primates. They have this unusual bony eye structure, again, to provide support. So we can see it here. Here we have it in this is a picture of a lemur, right? But it's the same concept here. It's a bar of bone lateral to the eye, but it does not fully enclose the eye in a bony pocket like we see in, say, humans. Despite having this additional support in their eye region, Lorises are not as reliant on their vision as many other primates. Vision is not as useful for nocturnal animals than it is for our diurnal animals. So Lorises then are not as reliant on their vision as many other primates. This means then that sense of smell is not enhanced, right? So sense of vision is not enhanced. You will have other senses like the sense of smell enhanced. So here we have Lorises have longer snouts and a rhinarium. And rhinariums and the longer snouts give them a stronger sense of smell. So you might be asking, what is a rhinarium? A rhinarium is a damp pad at the end of the nose, similar to what we find in a dog, right? So the reason why your dog's nose is always wet is because that's the rhinarium, right? Lorises tend to eat a lot of insects, usually will eat alone, but come together to socialize and sleep. Lorises will stalk their prey very slowly before pouncing. Some lorises move slowly on all fours, while others will move more rapidly while they leap through the trees. They have a mix of nails and claws, and they often use their claws to help groom their fur. Lorises have a 2-1-3-3 dental formula and a special type of tooth structure called the dental comb, which you can see here. The dental comb is made of lower incisors and canines that project outwards from the face. These are elongated and slender, and they're positioned very, very closely together, and it makes them resemble the tines of a cone, which then they use primarily for feeding, right? They'll either scrape out a tree bark to extract tree gums or insects. the dental comb is very useful for grooming. The other thing lorises have is an unfused mandible. So it means that their mandible is made up of two separate bones, right, that are then attached by cartilage at the midline, which is called the mandibular symphysis. You can see here. So this mandible is two separate bones, not like our mandible, which is one bone, right? Here it's two separate bones connected at that mandibular symphysis. So that's lorises. Next, we have lemurs, and lemurs are closely related to lorises and share many of the traits that we just discussed in common with our lorises. So lemurs and lorises very closely related. Lemurs are a very diverse group of primates. They're restricted to Madagascar, right? So that is a huge clue, right? Separating out lemurs and lorises, because I can give you a bunch of traits and they're going to sound very much like lorises, but I'll say something like I live in Madagascar, and that's going to clue you in to the fact that I'm talking about a lemur, right? Lemurs have adapted to a wide variety of environmental contexts on the island of Madagascar, which has resulted in an extensive diversity of the species. So some lemurs are very similar to lorises, right? They're small, nocturnal, eat a lot of insects. Other lemurs are more unusual. So lemurs form a wide range of social groups. Some species are similar to the lorises in that they prefer only limited social interaction. Other species, such as our ring-tailed lemurs, are very social, live in large groups of many individuals. Lemurs also have very different forms of locomotion depending on their environmental context. Most lemurs are arboreal, and they either move on all fours or they leap through the trees. A few species, like the ring-tailed lemur, are more terrestrial and will spend a lot of time on all fours on the ground. Despite that great diversity, all lemurs share some key traits with lorises. This is especially true of the nocturnal lemur species. So the key traits that they share with lorises are the post-orbital bars, but they're often less reliant on vision than monkey and apes. Lemurs tend to be more dependent on smell and have a long snout and rhinarium. Most lemurs have a 2133 dental formula, although there are some species that have fewer teeth, such as the ii. The ii has an upper dentition of 1013 and a lower dentition of 1003. And what this means, these dental formulas are the type of teeth there. So 2 incisors, 1 canine, 3 molars, 3 premolars, right? That's what most lemurs have. Here the ii has 1 incisor, 0 canines, 1 premolar, and 3 molars. And what this has to do, and I'm going to go back here, to the quadrant of the teeth. So this would be considered one quadrant, and this is the second quadrant. So here we have 1, 2 incisors, and it's hard to see, 1 canine, right, and a premolar here. And so we have 1, 2 incisors, 1 canine, and then 1 premolar here, right? So when I'm talking about dental formulas, that's what I'm talking about in the quadrant of the mouth. So we apes have a 2123 dental formula with 2 incisors, 1 canine, 3 premolars, and 3 molars in each quadrant of the mouth. And so that's what we're talking about. So again, most lemurs and lorises have a 2133 dental formula. Specifically within the lemurs is the ii. The ii has an upper dentition of 1013 and a lower dentition of 1003. So this is something that I can ask, where I can specifically ask for the ii, right? And say that they have a 1013 or 1003 dentition. Our lemurs, all lemurs, all lemurs will have a dental comb in their lower dentition. They will have unfused mandibles and a mix of claws and nails. All of these similarities reflect their close relationship with the lorises. Right, so I can say all of these, right? I have a post-orbital bar dependent on smell, dental comb, unfused mandible, mix of claws and nails, and then throw in I live in Madagascar. That should be your clue that I'm talking about lemurs. Or I'll throw in that I have an upper dentition of 1013 and a lower dentition of 1003, and I'll, clue you in then that I'm talking about lemurs, but specifically I'm talking about the ii. Okay? So that's lorises and lemurs. Next we have the tarsiers. Tarsiers are small primates. They live in Southeast Asia. They share a few traits in common with our lemurs and our lorises. Those being they're small, primarily eat insects. They're nocturnal, live in small social groups. They leap through the trees, similar to our galagos and some of our lemurs, and they have a mix of claw and nails. However, the tarsiers also share traits with the anthropoid primates, and this is why there is debate on where they truly lie. The similarities that they share with the anthropoids, right, is that they have a more enclosed bony orbit, right? They don't have a post-orbital bar. So what I would do, and I'm going to go back here, is I keep this here, and here now I have determined that both of these, the lorises and the lemurs, have a post-orbital bar. Anything outside of this then will not have a post-orbital bar. They're going to have fully enclosed eye orbits, right? So post-orbital bar should clue you in that I'm talking about lorises or lemurs, right? Anything with a post-orbital bar or a mention that they don't have a post-orbital bar, will belong to Haplorhini, right? Which could be your tarsiers, your Anthropoidea, Platyrrhini, Catarrhini, right? Anything along those lines. So now we have eliminated essentially that trait, right? Tarsiers also lack the dental comb, right? That's another trait we have eliminated. They have a short snout and a dry nose, another trait eliminated. So any of these three, right, say a post-orbital bar, a dental comb, and a wet nose, will say lemurs, lorises. Anything else will now be eliminated. You are no longer talking about those two. They are no longer part of what you are going to narrow it down to, right? Tarsiers also have a more anthropoid-like inner ear structure. There are more genetic similarity with anthropoids than with lemurs and lorises. Because of these similarities, tarsiers then are classified as being more closely related to our anthropoids. They also have unusual traits that are unique to tarsiers. So some of these are that they have a unique dental formula. Their upper dentition is 2133, as in lorises and lemurs. However, their lower dentition is 1133, 1 incisor, 1 canine, 3 premolars, 3 molars. Tarsiers have remarkably large eyes. Their eyes are so large that they dominate its face, and a single tarsier eye is larger than its entire brain. They have highly mobile necks. They can turn their heads almost 180 degrees in each direction, which then gives them the ability to rotate their heads almost 360 degrees. And then tarsiers have incredibly long legs and feet. So if you're thinking tarsier sounds like tarsal bones, you are correct, right? They have incredibly long legs and feet, and they have specially adapted tarsal bones for them. Okay, so this is our tarsiers. Next, we have anthropoids. Anthropoid primates are generally larger than the lemurs, lorises, and tarsiers. They tend to have larger brains for their body size. Almost all anthropoids are diurnal and rely more on their vision than their sense of smell. Because of that, they lack the olfactory adaptations of the lemurs and our lorises. They don't have a long snout. They don't have a rhinarium. They do have several traits related to their enhanced sight. Usually have color vision, full bony enclosures for their eyes. Their eyes are closer together in front of their face, and they provide more of an overlap between the fields of vision. The anthropoids can be subdivided then into the New World primates and the Old World primates, your platyrrhines and your catarrhines. New World primates are the monkeys that inhabit the Americas, or the quote-unquote New World, whereas the Old World primates are the monkeys and apes that inhabit Africa and Asia, or the quote-unquote Old World. So New World monkeys only in the New World, right? In the Old World, you've got monkeys and apes, right? So your catarrhini will include our apes as well. So the two groups can be distinguished by a few key traits. First, the New World monkeys have broad noses with nostrils that face out to the sides and a wide septum. The septum is that soft tissue between the nostrils. In contrast, your Old World monkeys and apes have narrower noses with nostrils that face downwards and have a narrow septum. So their names highlight this distinction. Platyrrhini comes from the Greek root for broad-nosed, and catarrhini is from the Greek root for hook-nosed. So platyrrhini is a broad nose, so broad noses, nostrils facing out to the sides, wide septum, and then catarrhini is hook-nosed, so narrower nose with nostrils that face downward and a narrow septum. Right. The second key difference between the two primate groups is their dentition. So New World monkeys tend to have 3 premolars in each quadrant of their mouth, while the Old World monkeys and apes have 2, right? So us humans, we're apes, right? We have a 2, 1, 2, 3, right? That 2, right? 2, 1, 2, 3, those premolars. So here's a picture between the platyrrhines and catarrhines, right? Platyrrhines, again, is broad nose, wide septum, nostrils facing outwards, right? Catarrhines is narrow nose, narrow septum here, and the nostrils facing downwards, right? So gives you an idea, right? This is a New World monkey. This is an Old World monkey. So let's go into our New World monkeys. The New World monkeys live in the forests of Central and South America. They have the platyrrhine nose structure and 3 premolars in each quadrant of their mouth. The dental formulas will vary between the species. There are many species of New World monkeys, and they do vary considerably. Most of them are arboreal and diurnal. However, there is one species that is nocturnal, and that is our owl monkeys. And then our New World monkeys have a variety of diets, right? So here, this is probably one of the more famous New World monkeys, used a lot of time for movies and TV shows. This is a capuchin monkey, right? Here we have a howler monkey, just to give you an idea of how different they are. Howler monkeys are one of the loudest animals on Earth. They make howling vocalizations to mark and to defend their territories and their females. Right, so we have capuchins, howler monkeys, and then we have these. So some of the smaller monkeys rely largely on insects and tree gums as their primary diet source. Others will rely more on fruits or trees. They tend to be relatively small, with some species living in large groups. Most will move through trees on all fours. Some have a special form of locomotion facilitated by what we call a prehensile tail. So this is something that is unique, specific to New World monkeys, is that prehensile tail. This prehensile tail has the ability to wrap around and grasp things and can be used as a 5th limb. None of the Old World monkeys have a prehensile tail, right? So here is a tamarin, right? Specifically a lion tamarin. And lion tamarins are actually very unusual. They are very small, and what makes them very unusual is that they often will give birth to twins. And we're going to talk about this more when it comes to the social organization. But they give birth to twins and live in unusual social groups where you have more adult males than adult females. So this is a lion tamarin. Here's a look at that prehensile tail, right? They use it as a 5th limb. So these are woolly spider monkeys. They have a prehensile tail that can grab onto tree branches that you can use as a fifth limb. So that is our New World monkey. Usually what will clue you into the New World monkey that I'm talking about, a New World monkey, is the broad nose, the wide septum, or the prehensile tail. So usually I'll throw in prehensile tail just to make the question easier for you guys. Next is the Old World monkeys. So all Old World monkeys will have a catarrhine nose structure as well as 2 premolars in each quadrant of their mouth, which gives them a dental formula of 2, 1, 2, 3. The Old World monkeys live in various habitats in Africa and Asia. They're generally diurnal. They live in large social groups and move on all fours. They have unique molars called bilophodont molars. So these molars have 4 cusps that are arranged in 2 parallel ridges. So this is one entire molar, and here are the 1, 2, 3, 4 cusps that are arranged in 2 ridges, the lophs essentially. So bi meaning 2, loaf, ridges, 2 ridged molars, bilophodont. Old World monkeys also have a special patch of roughened skin on their rears called ischial callosities. Ischial will refer to the area of the pelvis that we sit on, right? So just remember back to the bones, the ischium, right? It's where we sit on, right? So ischial referring to that side of the pelvis, and then callosity referring to the callus-like roughened skin, right? So a lot of Old World monkeys will have ischial callosities. 2 subgroups of Old World monkeys are the Colobines and the Cercopithecines. So we're going to narrow this down even further, right? We didn't have to do it for New World monkeys, but we do have to narrow it down further for our Old World monkeys. So first is the Colobines. This includes monkeys such as the langur and the colobus monkey. Most of our Colobines live in Asia. Few species are found in Africa. Colobines tend to be medium-sized. They have long tails. Again, they have long tails, but they are not prehensile, right? They cannot be used for grasping. Usually our Colobines are arboreal and they eat a lot of leaves. Many have special adaptations for their leaf-eating diet, such as a complex stomach. So here we have a proboscis monkey. Proboscis monkeys are Asian Colobines, and they have that unusually long nose, which makes them so unique. Here we have a colobus monkey. This is a black and white colobus specifically, right? This is one of the Colobines that live in Africa. And we talked about colobus monkeys in the last lab when we were talking about that complex and long stomach and digestive system. So these are our colobus monkeys, our Colobines. Then we have our Cercopithecines. So this includes monkeys that are often larger than our Colobines, things like our baboons and our macaques. They're usually found in Africa, but some live in Asia. Many are terrestrial and have relatively short tails. Some are arboreal and have long tails, tend to have a more diverse diet with more fruit than that of our leaf-eating Colobines. And they have special cheek pouches that allow them to store food. These cheek pouches help them collect a lot of food in a short period of time in order to store it for later. So I think a lot like a chipmunk or a squirrel, they just shove everything into their mouth. They hold it in those cheek pouches, allowing them to store that food for later. Here we have olive baboons. So Cercopithecines, again, just remember they're larger. They have a more diverse diet and they have cheek pouches. Right here we have olive baboons. So those are our Cercopithecines. Next we have our apes, our Hominoidea. So humans and our apes, and we have a worldwide distribution. But the other apes are restricted to Central Africa and Southeast Asia. The apes are catarrhines like the Old World monkeys, so they have several catarrhine traits in common with our Cercopithecoids. The dental formula is 2, 1, 2, 3, so 2 incisors, 1 canine, 2 premolars, 3 molars. They also have a catarrhine nose structure, so narrow nasal septum, narrow nose, nostrils facing downwards. All apes have a special type of molar we call the Y5 molar in the lower dentition. So we are no longer talking about the bilophodont molars. Old world monkeys, we said, have those bilophodont molars with the 4 cusps arranged in 2 rows. In apes, the lower molars have 5 cusps that are positioned such that they have a pronounced Y-shaped groove between them, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 5 cusps, and you have this Y-shaped groove. So Y5 molars. Y for the groove, 5 for the cusps. The upper molars are slightly different. They tend to have 4 cusps without the Y-shaped groove. Apes also have flatter, more orthognathic faces, while other primates have more projecting prognathic faces. Apes tend to have larger brains for their body size. They are diurnal, usually live in heavily forested area where they will spend at least some of their time in the trees. All apes retain adaptations for swinging through the trees, so the long arms and curved fingers, right? We have retained those adaptations for swinging through the tree. We have long arms, and if you take your arm and you relax your hand, right, your fingers are going to automatically curl inwards, right? So that is an adaptation we have retained from swinging through the trees. One of the most defining ape characteristics that distinguishes them from other primates is their lack of a tail. So no apes have a tail. This is an important shared derived trait that highlights their close evolutionary relationship. So anytime you see a stuffed animal that has a tail and it is marked as a chimpanzee, know that it is wrong, right? No apes have tails. You might be able to tell. This is one of my pet peeves when apes are classified as monkeys. It's one of my pet peeves. So just keep that in mind. Apes do not have tails. Monkeys have tails. So chimpanzees are not monkeys. They are apes. So no tails in our apes. With our apes, we do have them divided into 2 families. We have our lesser apes, our Hylobatidae, and our greater apes, which are our Hominidae. We're going to talk about first our lesser apes, and then we're going to get into our great apes. So our lesser apes, our Hylobatidae, are our gibbons and our siamangs. So numerous species of gibbons and 1 species of siamang live in the forests of Southeast Asia. They are diurnal. They are frugivorous, and they live in small social groups. Both males and females help defend their territory through complex vocalization, often referred to as songs. In some species, the males and females also share parenting responsibilities and help take care of their offspring. Primarily, they will move around by swinging through the trees. They have smaller, more gracile bodies, longer arms, and longer, more curved fingers to help with that locomotion. Another thing that helps with that locomotion and is unique to gibbons and siamangs is their very short thumbs. They have very short thumbs, so that doesn't interfere with the ape's rapid arboreal swinging. So that's something that and I can guarantee this is a question on the quiz where I ask about gibbons and siamangs. I will state they live in the forests of Southeast Asia. They're diurnal, frugivorous, they live in small social groups and all that stuff. Everything that is a gibbon and a siamang and could be for other primates that we're talking about. But I will throw in, I have very short thumbs. That should automatically tell you that we are talking about a gibbon or a siamang. And in your multiple choice, it'll only have one. It'll only have gibbon, it'll only have siamang. I don't remember which one of the 2, but it is in there. I can guarantee that question is on the quiz. The other thing that they have is strong shoulders with a lot of mobility, right? For that arm over arm swinging. So that is our gibbons and our siamangs, our lesser apes. Now, and not that I love all primates, and I absolutely do love all primates, but I love apes. I love the great apes. And so we are now going to move on into my favorite section, which is our great apes. And we'll start first with the orangutans. And notice it's orangutan. It's another one of my pet peeves, but I don't really say anything about it. Orangutans. If you are around my age, you might remember a drink that came out in the 90s called Tang. It was this orange drink, orange flavored drink. It was called Tang. And the mascot, you could say, was an orangutan. which then caused so many people of that generation to start calling them orangutans. I can't even say it. And so it is one of my pet peeves when people say orangutan, when it's orangutan. So orangutans. Orangutans are great apes. They are found exclusively on the islands of Borneo and Sumatra. They are known for their unusually orange fur and the extreme size differences between the males and the females, or what we know as sexual dimorphism. They are diurnal, eat a lot of fruit, and they spend most of their time alone. So orangutans really are a solitary species. However, when food is more abundant, they are known to congregate temporarily, but they will go back to being solitary most of the time. It is why when I was younger, I used to think that orangutans were just not depressed. I mean, I didn't understand what depression was as a child, but I always thought they were so sad. Every time I would go and I'd go to the zoo, and I would just think that they were so sad sitting by themselves, and they look so sad sitting there. But it's really because they enjoy a more solitary lifestyle. That's their social organization. They're more solitary, right? But if there is an abundance of food, they will congregate temporarily. The orangutan cranium is relatively robust. They have large orbits that sit relatively close together in the face, and then the upper portion of the face will angle in slightly, and it creates this very unique dish-shaped face. You can really see it in our male orangutans more than our female orangutans. They have lateral incisors that are considerably smaller than their medial incisors, and orangutans are frugivorous, and so they have very large, those incisors, their first incisors are larger than their second incisors. So they have two incisors, and it's because they bite into the fruit that they eat. So that's our orangutans. Next is our gorillas. Gorillas are probably by far my favorite of all the apes. Gorillas are classified in the same hominid family with orangutans, but they are placed in a separate subfamily. They live in the forests of equatorial Africa. Some live in the highlands while others live in the lowlands. Thus, they have some minor differences in their lifestyles and their features. In general, gorillas, especially the males, are very large. They're actually the largest of all the primates. Due to that size, they are more terrestrial than many of the other apes, and there are significant differences between the male and female gorillas. Some differences include the trademark silver-colored fur seen on the back of adult males but not on females. They're also diurnal and live in relatively large social groups. They eat a lot of leaves, and they eat far more than any other ape. And then the cranium is very robust, mostly related to their heavy plant diet and extensive chewing required with this lifestyle. Right, so extensive chewing, larger muscles, more robust cranium. So here is a gorilla. It's like my favorite. I love gorillas. Next, we have chimpanzees and bonobos. So the closest living relatives of humans are the chimpanzees and bonobos, and they are classified with humans in the Hominoidea subfamily to reflect this. Chimpanzees are classified as pan-troglodytes, and bonobos are classified as pan-peniscus. Both live in equatorial Africa, but the chimpanzees are found in several areas while bonobos are restricted to this very particular area in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The two species are separated by the Congo River, and they are not found in overlapping areas. Chimpanzees often live in territory shared by gorillas, but gorillas do not live in the area where bonobos are found. Chimpanzees and bonobos are diurnal. They spend some of their time in the trees and some time on the ground. They eat a wide variety of food, fruit, leaves, nuts, insects, and small animals. And their crania are relatively robust, but not nearly as robust as those of gorillas. Chimpanzees also live in large social groups. And some differences between the adult males and there are some differences between the adult males and females in the species, so there's some sexual dimorphism. There are some important physical and behavioral differences between bonobos and chimpanzees that help distinguish them as a different species, right? I mean, I showed you these two pictures, and while you can see the differences between the two, it might be hard to decide which is a bonobo and which is a chimpanzee, right? This is a bonobo. This is a chimpanzee, right? And you might be able to guess it because you're more familiar to seeing chimpanzees and you recognize that this bonobo looks different, right? But they're very, very similar to one another. Bonobos tend to have longer, leaner bodies than chimpanzees do. They are also a little bit more arboreal than chimps are. The major differences, though, between the two, chimpanzees and bonobos, relate to their level of aggression and their sexual activities. So chimpanzees tend to be more violent and have fewer sexual interactions, whereas bonobos tend to be less violent and have frequent, often non-reproductive sexual interactions. So the way that I put it is that bonobos are all about peace and love, whereas chimpanzees are not, right? Bonobos or chimpanzees, we have evidence that they conduct rape and murder and things like that, whereas bonobos are much more loving and non-violent than chimpanzees are. Chimpanzees will even commit infanticide when it benefits them. So they're very, very violent. I do still love them. I do really, really love learning about them and seeing them. But I do know that they are a lot more violent than bonobos are. And then we get humans. So humans are classified in the same hominin subfamily with chimpanzees and bonobos, but they are then separated from these other species in the tribe Hominini. Humans have larger brains for their body size, flatter, more orthognathic faces, and smaller relative tooth sizes. They have generalized diets, limited sexual dimorphism, and numerous adaptations for walking on two legs. And we'll get more into that once we finish the primate section. The last thing I want to discuss is ongoing primate taxonomy research. So as we know, new species are being discovered all the time, and it's very exciting when we find new primate species specifically. So the primate order has continued to evolve and diversify throughout the 65 million year history. This was the case with the orangutan species Pongo tapanuliensis, which was recently identified in Sumatra. So prior to this, we only knew of 2 species of orangutan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well as our gibbons, our Hulot gibbons. So researchers, first discovered in 1997, right? Researchers collected data on the physical traits, behaviors, and genetics of these primates. So it took 2 decades to systematically study the small population and compare it with other orangutans, right? And so they collected that data on the physical traits, the behaviors, the genetics before they concluded that this population of fewer than 800 orangutans living in the Batang Toru ecosystem of North Sumatra was in fact a distinct species that first diverged from other Sumatran orangutans around 3.4 million years ago, and then became completely isolated around 10,000 to 20,000 years ago. So first discovered in 1997, and it took 20 years for them to fully identify that they were a own separate species. So it's very, very, very exciting. It's also very interesting to see how they isolated, because what they originally thought was that they were related to one species of orangutans, but in fact they were more closely related to another species that was on a whole separate island. It's very, very, very fascinating. I highly, highly encourage you to look into it because they are actually now the most extinct species or close to extinction of orangutans. They're very cute as well. They have these cute little cinnamon colored fur, and then they have these little mustaches, little goatees that are so cute to see. And then we have other similar discoveries that have been made in more recent years on other primate groups. So we have Hulot gibbons. So after noting that the Hulot gibbons in China's Yunnan province had different vocalizations and physical traits than other Hulot gibbons, scientists began studying and comparing their features and genes. And they discovered that these gibbons were a distinct species, so Hulot tianxing. And I know I butchered that. So they commonly now refer to them, and I love the name. I love the name because I am a huge nerd. But I love the name that they commonly refer to them. And so Hulak gibbons, the Hulak tiancheng, is now referred to as the Skywalker Hulak gibbon. And it's in reference to both the Star Wars films and the Chinese characters of its species name, which means heaven's movement. So I absolutely love this. Although Skywalker Hulak gibbons were known and had been photographed 100 years earlier, their status as a separate species was determined only recently in 2017 after those systematic comparisons and genetic analysis. So one thing to note is that in both the orangutan and the gibbon cases, people knew of the primates long before scientific research confirmed their distinct species designations. And one of the key things that really helped us fully identify that the orangutan species, I am blanking on the name. Anyways, this specific orangutan species was separate, was that they actually encountered a dead, I believe, male, and they're able to do genetic analysis on that, on the dead male, and realize and get confirmation with genetic data that it was a separate species. Right? So that is the end of this chapter. Pongo tapanuliensis is the name. That is the end of this chapter, or this lab, right? We have covered the taxonomy of primates. Again, go over the chart, go through the chart, really go through it and know, okay, as we get to this species, this trait falls off or this trait emerges, and that'll really help you identify what we're talking about. A lot of the questions on the quiz are going to be, I live here, I do this, I have this trait, and what am I, kind of a question. So there's going to be quite a few of those. Okay, so that is the end of this section. The next section, we are continuing discussing primates, but in a different aspect.